Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.
Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. My guest today is a son of the Irish Channel. His 40 years in the music business have spanned the highest highs and the lowest lows. Since parting ways with the rock band Cowboy Mouth in 2006, he has collaborated with a wide spectrum of New Orleans musicians on solo albums and on 9 Lives, his musical adaptation of Dan Baum's best-selling Post-Katrina Chronicle. On April 29th, he and a star-studded cast will perform 9 Lives at the Civic Theater. Then, on May 4th, he and the 24 members of his Rolling Road Show will rock the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. Here to talk about all that and more is Paul Sanchez. Paul, welcome to Let's Talk.
So good to see you.
Did that sound like you, that intro?
I was impressed by me. That sounded better than me. My life suddenly sounds really great. Thank you.
Sounds pretty interesting, huh? Who knew? Who knew?
You're so busy doing stuff, you don't realize you've done stuff.
Right. Well, you don't want to look back because then you're not looking forward.
Right. I mean, it's about the doing, I was talking to a friend of mine recently who's thinking about putting out a solo album, and he said, well, I might be too old. I've never done it before. And I'm like, he goes, who would buy it? I said, what do you care? Art's the doing.
Right.
Business is the selling.
Right.
That's different.
Very different things. Very different things.
By the way, I just love the mug. I'm going to be having coffee with Keith Spera from now on.
I am.
We used to.
Honored and flattered.
And
That's right.
Before
Back
you were
in the
married
day.
and I was running around the world with a rock band and marrying different people.
Marrying different people, exactly. Yeah, we've had a long and crazy history. Well, let's talk a little bit about recent history. The 9 Lives project, built on the book. You had, I think it was 130 musicians?
135.
On the CD version of 9 Lives. 135 musicians. That's insane.
It was just amazing because it ranged from Alan Toussaint, Irma Thomas, the cream of the crop, to I'd see a street musician on the way in and go, hey, follow me to Piety. I got something I want you to do. And then word got out and people just started calling, like Mem Shannon, Anders Osborne, hey, can you use me? I'm like, absolutely. You're Mem Shannon. I'll put you on that record. And he's on there playing some badass guitar on the end of Rebuild Renew. And Anders is singing in the same place. I used anybody that called. Because to me, it was all about the community, and I had a budget. The Threadheads were largely funding the project.
Threadheads, that's a charitable organization that kind of helps out, a philanthropic organization that helps out musicians.
They formed after Katrina, and they help out musicians all the time. And so they were largely funding the project, and their whole mission is to help New Orleans musicians. So if I'd say I'm hiring, so they'd be like, hire more. Get everybody on this thing.
And you got some money from Pepsi too, I think, right?
I think we got an initial grant of $50,000 from Pepsi, but I believe the Threadheads raised another $100,000 for us.
So you pay all those 130 musicians that you had on the thing, yeah.
Yeah, and we were paid well, I was trying to be as good as I could to everybody, and I come from a big family that was really poor. My mother had nothing, but she taught me to share. Even if it was the last piece of bread and somebody was hungry, she shared it with a neighbor. And I share. Sometimes maybe to a fault. I've had people go, why do you share so much? Save a little for us. And I go, well, what's the point? If I can help somebody, I'm going to help them.
Well, yeah, you had how many siblings growing up in the Irish Channel?
5 brothers and 5 sisters.
So it's a family of 11.
Yes.
So that prepared you to do 135 musicians on 9 Lives. It was just an extension of growing up, basically.
My entire history in music is an extension of growing up in that big family. I still want to surround myself with a bunch of kids in the playpen. Rolling Roadshow at the Jazz Fest every year. It's upwards of 15, sometimes 20. This year it's 22 people, because I want to share the moment. It's not about my moment. It's about our moment. I want to give Quint the biggest festival within a festival I can give him in the time I'm allotted.
Quint Davis, the producer of the festival.
Of course.
Right. You want to give him a little bit of all of that.
And
right.
to me, it's called a musical community. It's a New Orleans musical community. And I came home after 15 years on the road. I loved so many different kinds of music. I loved the brass band with Craig Klein, and I loved, David Torkanowski's playing, and I loved, of course, Sonia Tetlow and Mary LeSang from my days in Cowboy Mouth. So I just hired musicians I liked. And it didn't dawn on me until later that I'd put together all these different styles of New Orleans music, and they never played together before. And it was Debbie Davis actually who told me, because I hire her a lot, and I said, this is amazing, this is a great collection of different styles. And she went, yes, and none of us ever met or played together before you did this. You know, we all kind of stayed in our niche. And that to me that's the most fun. You know, they all got to know each other, and then everybody started appearing on everybody else's things, and Shamar turned into a rock and roll star, left jazz behind. It was a wonderful time.
Yeah, no, in this project, I mean, 9 Lives, it's kind of aptly named because it has had multiple lives now. I mean, it was a CD. You guys were working for years to get it on Broadway. And now there's talk of you're pitching as a limited run TV series as being
Chris Joseph, who was the guy who started Threadhead Records, and he's been a friend of mine since the flood. He's done so much to help me in my career. He bought the rights from Dan Baum's widow when Dan passed away.
Dan Baum is the writer of 9 Lives, the book, right?
And so we pitched it. We got a production company in LA called Bohemia, and we pitched it to them, and they liked it. But they told us flat out, it's going to be really difficult to turn this into a series or a film if it's going to be a musical, because that's hard to pull off. And they suggested we do a limited run series first, and if it works, we can probably get the musical done a lot easier. And so they had a writer, Frankie Everlay, beautiful young man, who coincidentally had come to New Orleans after the flood and met Joanne Gaidos at Cajun's Pub.
One of the characters in
the
9
book.
Lives, yep.
So he was, in fact, the guy from Bohemia said, oh, I got this new project from New Orleans, and he goes, please tell me it's 9 Lives, because I want to write that script. So that's a beautiful enthusiasm you can't buy. And he wrote a beautiful pilot. And then I reached out to Eric Overmyer, who was one of the executive producers of the Treme series. And I performed in it, and they allowed me even to act, which was awful nice of them, and I had a great time. And Chris reached out to him and asked him if he'd be interested in being an executive producer. And on Lundi Gras, of all days, I got the beautiful gift of him writing back an enthusiastic yes.
That Eric would be, yes.
Yes, Eric wrote back, that's an enthusiastic yes. So he's going to be the executive producer. We're pitching right now, actually, to some streaming services like Amazon, Netflix, Paramount, and hopefully, especially with the 20th anniversary of Katrina coming up, somebody will see the value in the retelling of this story at this time.
What was it about the book, about the 9 Lives book, that originally appealed to you, that made you want to invest so much time and effort? Because you wrote, what, it ended up being 39 songs in the end?
The first CD, Volume 1, was 24 songs, and then I had all these songs, and Threadhead said, we have more money if you want to keep going. Somebody should have shut me down. But
somebody should have said enough. Enough.
But I did 39 songs, and in the end, I don't regret it. I think if anybody ever wanted to do just the musical, just like Jesus Christ Superstar, where it's just songs, those 39 songs tell the story without a word of dialogue. I couldn't convince them of that in New York. As much as they celebrate innovation like Lin-Manuel's Hamilton or David Byrne's, Here Lies Love, they found me a director that got on the phone with me and said, how do we make this more like typical musical theater so we can get the public theater to put it on? And being from the Irish Channel, my answer was, that's funny, I was going to ask you, how do we keep it original so we can call it art? And we never really hit it off.
Didn't really hit it off. No, I could see an impasse there.
But they couldn't see anything past. They kept going to formula. Let's go to formula. We got to make dialogue and make this formula. And I was like, but it already worked. It worked in front of 700 people, 2 shows where they stood and cheered and cried and laughed. And I don't know what else you want from a show.
Yeah.
Anyway, we went to these guys, and now I think it's looking really good for it to be a limited run series, like a 6-episode arc. And then we'll see from there. But it's been fun, and Chris Joseph was kind enough to involve me and my brother Johnny in the project, and our friend Scott Shallett. So everything's coming up, Paulie.
And you'll be performing all the songs on April 29th with Brian Batt, Michael Cerveris, both of whom have been on the show.
Yes.
And a whole bunch of
Shamar Allen, Vance Vauquerson, who has Vauquerson sausage, but in true New Orleans fashion is a fantastic singer and poet himself. Debbie Davis, Kim Kay from Loose Cattle, and Michael Cerveris's band. So, yeah, it's going to be Matt Perrine is the band director with a fantastic 8-piece band behind him. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool. That's something to look forward to.
And I think we've talked about this, but in 2018, I lost my voice.
Yes.
I had a series of both physical and emotional traumas. I had 2 surgeries on my throat. One was for a dental thing that almost killed me. It's called Ludwig angina. It's very rare, but it will kill you, and I had to have emergency surgery on the left side of my throat. And then a month later, spine surgery where they had to move my vocal cords. And my brain just said enough, and it shut me down. I couldn't speak for 4 months. I couldn't sing for 2 years. And just kept at it. I wouldn't give up. My wife wouldn't let me give up. Allison just said, you know, just be patient, it'll come. And about 3 weeks ago it did, and I'm singing again with more joy and gratitude than I've ever had in my life because I really missed it. And I'm going to be doing a new record. In the time that I took off the pandemic, I couldn't sing, right? So Allison bought me a piano at an estate sale, and I didn't know how to play, but she thought that would occupy my mind. I started learning all these Sinatra ballads that I'd love, Cole Porter, Hoagie Carmichael, and all these new chords, and suddenly my voice teacher, Guy Tem, said, hey, I hear you're a great singer. You have any new songs? And I said, no, I can't sing. And if I can't sing, I can't write. I haven't written in 2 years. And he smiled and said, well, I got you singing again, so I want to hear a new song. And I went home, and instead of writing a rock song, I sat at the piano and I wrote like a Sinatra ballad. And then I sat down and wrote 10 more. And I called Shamar. I said, hey, man, I'm singing again, and I've written these songs, and would you produce a record for me? So Shamar is going to do his first jazz record since he went to rock and roll, which I feel good about because I led him into rock and roll.
Right.
It's only right that I should get him
Absolutely.
back into jazz.
Yeah, return the favor.
He's probably going to play everything but the keyboard. He's got a keyboard player in mind, and I'm very excited about it.
That's awesome. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is Paul Sanchez, the New Orleans singer and songwriter. Yeah, so when you say, so you feel now your voice is fully recovered from the
I wouldn't say fully. It's a work in progress. I have most of my range back. I feel like in another few months, I'm going to be probably a better singer than I've ever been. I certainly, I'm doing really great. I'm very, very pleased.
It's not a way you would recommend to improve your voice, which you went through, but if it ends up that you end up with an improved voice, that's kind of a cool thing.
We can't determine what happens to us, and what happened to me was my ex-wife ghosted, and I just disappeared from New Orleans, booked gigs around the world, around the country, just trying to figure it out. And when it finally broke down, I had an impinged nerve. So I'm driving to gigs in California. I can't drive right-handed anymore. I'm in too much pain. And I'd play the gig for 90 minutes, and I'd be in so much pain, I'd leave the room immediately so I could cry. And then my voice started going. I couldn't introduce songs anymore. I could sing, but I couldn't talk. And then by the time I got home to New Orleans, I couldn't do either. And so I couldn't lay in bed. It was too painful. For 2 months, I was in an easy chair waiting for my surgery. And the only way I could be pain-free was to keep my chin on my chest to create space in the vertebrae where the discs used to be. So a friend emailed me, Sonia, and said, how you doing? I said, well, I can't talk. I can't sing. I can't play guitar. And I have to keep my head bowed to the universe in humility. I think I get the message. So ultimately, I took it as a grace, man. I was like, I've had a great career. I'm just a poor kid from the channel. I've seen the world with my songs. I got nothing to be sorry about. If this is how I'm gonna have to be, if I can never sing again, I've had a great life, and I'm gonna find some way else to be creative. But I never gave up trying, I never gave up trying to sing, and I kept saying it didn't matter. I kept telling people I'm all right, but when I started singing again, I was jumping up and down. I was so happy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I truly sing with gratitude pouring out of me now. I'm grateful for every note.
That, at this stage in your career, that's an interesting reset to kind of have, to basically, because as I referenced in the intro, you've been through a lot of good and bad over the course of your careers. I mean, I remember you telling me years ago, I started out in this business, I knew all the stories of New Orleans musicians that had bad things happen to them, were taken advantage of, and now you've lived all those,
every one of them.
All the bad decisions.
Ripped off by the record companies and the managers and the wrong decisions and the wrong bandmates and all that. It all happened to me.
It did it all. So having been through all that, I mean, this health episode was almost like kind of wiping the slate clean.
It really was.
And giving you another restart.
A chance to step away. I couldn't even go out because I couldn't talk to people, and people didn't understand. They thought I might be being snobby, and I couldn't sing with anybody, and everybody's like, why won't you sing with me? I just couldn't, So I really just was home, meditating and reflecting on life, and turns out that I had a pretty good one. I mean, I had some, it wasn't all gravy with Cowboy Mouth. I remember we played a gig in Georgia once in the early days, and it was a strip mall, right? And it's a big rock club. So we get in, and it's this real short woman with a crew cut, tough-looking woman, and behind her a big bald shaved head bouncer with a goatee, earrings, and he's tough. And we set up, and we do sound check, and Doors open, nobody comes. Not one person walks in, right?
Wow.
We wait hour and a half, and finally the lady walks over to us, a little short, stocky thing. She goes, well, boys, doesn't look like anybody's gonna come. I guess I give you $100 and send you on your way, because that's what she was paying us, right? And I go, well, we're all set up, you know. Would you like us to play you a song? She goes, can if you want. So we played her song of mine called The Stars Remind Me of You, a sweet little country ballad. And she stood there the whole time, not expressionless, just watching, nodding her head. And the bouncer's behind her, expressionless, just nodding his head. We finished the song and she goes, that's real nice, boys. Now pack up and get on out of here.
You did not dazzle her.
We did not dazzle.
Did not dazzle her.
No, sir.
You know, it's funny to think, I mean, at this point in your career, you've been out of Cowboy Mouth longer than you were in Cowboy Mouth. Is it just, I don't know, a thing in your past now at this point? Because you are still, you know, as you referenced, your Jazz Fest show this year, you're going to have a couple of ex-members of Cowboy Mouth playing with you, and one current, John Thomas Griffith, the guitar player, is supposed to come play with you at Jazz Fest.
Actually, Griff's going to come sing Men on the Run with Steve Walters on bass, who is our second bass player, Sonia Tetlow on mandolin, who is our fourth bass player, Rob Savoy on bass, who is our third, on acoustic guitar, who's our third bass player, and Jonathan Pretis on rhythm guitar, who took my place in Cowboy Mouth. So a total of 6 Mouth members on stage for for John's song.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, no, I mean it is. I mean, you know, like you said, that was the band that let you see the world, and some of the, you know, your songs.
So let me
that
see
you
the
wrote.
world. I found an audience for my solo stuff, which is all I ever really wanted. You know, in the early days, we were in Nashville recording some demos for Fred's publishing company, sitting on a hill at an amphitheater watching Tom Petty play the Great Wide Open Tour. And Griff knew a girl who got us tickets, of course.
Of course, yeah.
And we're sitting there, and Griff looks at me, and Nancy Griffith was playing that night at the Bluebird. 200 people sold out.
Yeah.
I love Nancy Griffith. He looks at me and goes, if you had a choice, where would you rather be tonight, playing a sold-out show at the Bluebird or playing here at the amphitheater? And without hesitating, I went to Bluebird, man. I want 200 people listening. That's what I want. And he turned to Freddie, goes, what about you, Freddie? And Fred goes, Bluebird. And he looks at me and goes, Freddie. And Fred goes, right here at the amphitheater. So we were always interested in different things.
Right,
you know?
Fred being Fred LeBlanc, the drummer, and singer.
And I had a great time in California. I was on a radio station a couple of weeks ago, and a guy's friend texted in, the DJ's friend texted in and said, would you ask him these questions? Did you enjoy it? Yes, it was great fun. It was silly fun. I'm glad there were no camera phones back then.
Right.
And, you know, would you go back? And I said, no. Would you go back to high school?
No.
High school was fun, but I wouldn't go back. I've done way more mature work, way more work that's representative of me, so it's been fun. And I got to work with people like Irma Thomas on 9 Lives, you know, and George Porter. I wrote a story yesterday about Ivan wanting Aaron to give him that.
Ivan Neville, yeah.
And so he used to work on the docks. In the lean times of his career, he worked on the docks.
Aaron, Aaron Neville did.
Yeah, Aaron did, Ivan's father. And Aaron had no shame about it. If his family needed money, he was going to go do some hard work. My dad worked those docks right alongside of him, I'm sure. And so I'm doing 9 Lives, and I asked George Porter and Walter Wolfman Washington and Chaz to sing this song, It's Like a Dance. And I give them each a verse. And George comes up to me, he goes, Paul, how'd you know to give me this verse? I said, what are you talking about, George? He goes, well, the verse is about a young guy getting hired to go on the docks, and he's humping sacks, but he's working too fast because he's making the other guys look bad, and they come out and tell him to slow down. I go, yeah. He goes, man, that's what happened to me. When I was young, Aaron got me a job on the docks. So I was young, you know, I wanted to go down, I wanted to impress him, you know, show him how much it meant to me to get that job. So I'm humping them sacks. And Aaron walks up to me, and he goes, slow down.
Kid.
Kid. Well, yeah, he didn't say kid.
Right.
He didn't say kid. But he says, slow down. Mm-hmm. And George said, I just laughed and said, okay, I slow down.
Making us look bad. Making us look bad. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is singer-songwriter Paul Sanchez. You talk about playing the Bluebird Cafe. You started your career in a band called the Backbeats, which was a rock and roll band. But then you made a record in New York called Jet Black and Jealous, a solo record, which is sitting right here. There's a copy of it sitting here on the desk. This, to me, is just such a great album. And you still get people talking to you about this record all the time.
You know, I'm so blessed with that. It's been now 30 years since it came out.
Yeah.
And I just got an email last week from somebody saying how much the record meant to them. And I get that a few times a year still, you know, couples telling me that they fell in love to it, or just somebody saying how much it meant to, and writers. It's an amazing amount of songwriters who tell me that it inspired them to become songwriters. So again, that's a blessing, that's a grace in your life when not everybody gets rich, but if you help somebody, if you made a difference in somebody's life, or if you just amused them for a moment, even that's tough to do, you know?
Well, yeah, a lot of these songs on here are songs that became staples of the Cowboy Mouth show. I mean, Light It on Fire. What other one? My Little Blue One. I think you guys used to do Louisiana Lowdown.
And really, I recorded it. I was living in New York, trying to be the next Bob Springsteen or Bruce Dillon.
Bob Springsteen or Bruce Dillon? Yeah.
Well,
okay.
all those jobs were taken, I found out. And my friend Roger Manning, who's a great songwriter, I was going to move home. He says, well, let's record all the songs you did here. So he had a little Tascam cassette recorder, 4-track cassette recorder. I just sat on a stool and he'd hit record and we'd play them. 4 years later, I'm in Cowboy Mouth. I'm sitting out of a bar in Atlanta. We just opened up for this band that we said, hey, what do you like? We do original music from New Orleans, rock and roll. And they go, oh, we like the Chili Peppers, but different. Because in '93, everybody was like the Chili Peppers, but different.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the Chili Peppers, let alone the bands that were like them, but different. So I'd had a few too many whiskeys after our set, and the band was on. I'm sitting out in front of the bar, just angry looking. And this woman walks up and she goes, what's wrong with you? You just played a great set. I said, you want to know what's wrong with me? Surly as could be. I said, I hate the band I'm in. I hate the band that's on stage. I'm a great songwriter, nobody cares. And she hands me a card. She goes, I care, send me your stuff. So I sent her that demo tape of the 4-track cassette demos, and she calls me 2 weeks later. She goes, I love this, I want to put it out. And I said, great, how much budget do I get? She goes, no, I want to put this out. I said, but this was done on cassette recorder. She goes, I don't care, find an engineer, get rid of the tape hiss. The guy singing these songs sounds like he believes nobody's ever going to listen to him, and you'll never recapture that. And so that's what we did.
And that's what Jet Black and Jealous was. Just, it was your original cassette demo recordings is what ended up being the finished record.
That woman passed away just last month. I went to her funeral. She gave me my start. Without her, I wouldn't have been the songwriter I am. Kathy Hendricks was her name.
When you look at the guy on this cover of this record, the sort of, pensive-looking singer-songwriter guy, I mean, it's a cliche question to ask, but I mean, what would you tell that guy now, looking back? I mean,
I would tell him to lighten up. I was so brutally hard on myself. I was so filled with self-loathing and the fear that I wasn't good enough. I ran into a friend of mine from the New York days. We called it the anti-folk scene. Out in California, just before I broke down, I was playing a show in San Francisco. And he came out, I hadn't seen him in 30 years. He's with a friend, and I go to his table after the show, and he turns to his friend. He goes, when this guy got to New York, we thought we were finished. He had the voice, he had the look, he had the songs, he had the guitar playing. He was everything we were all pretending to be. I looked at him, I said, man, I wish somebody would have told me something. I hated myself. Thought I was a poser. So I would tell him to lighten up and laugh more and enjoy the ride.
But isn't that the thing? I mean, everybody's their own worst critic. I mean, you thought you were nothing, and yet you wrote a record that, people are still digging 30 plus years
As I've
later.
said many times, I don't know anybody that picked up an instrument because they were happy.
I thought it was all because you wanted to meet girls.
That's later. It's just the first few years you're alone in your room practicing, and because you suck and you don't want anybody to hear you. Then when you're good, you want your friends to hear you and tell you you're good. Then you want to meet girls.
Then
Then you're less interested in being good. You're way more interested in meeting girrs.
And that becomes, its own problem. So,
it becomes its own problem.
We just got a couple minutes left, but I want you to tell real quick the story. When Irma Thomas was on the Nine Lives Project, you did your homework before she came into this.
I'm in Irma Thomas. I've listened to her since I was a boy. I learned to slow dance to her, so I wanted her to dig the song. I was honored and thrilled. So I listened to her stuff. The scene in the book takes place in '67. So I went back to the mid-'60s and listened to everything I could find from Irma.
This is the scene where you wrote a song to kind of that's set in that year, 1967.
Where Wilbert Rollins' father is Irma's drummer.
Okay.
And he goes out to watch her play at a outside show, and he falls asleep to the seductive sounds of her voice.
Okay.
So I looked at her ballads from that period, and I checked out the keys, I checked out the lyrics, I checked out what they were about, I checked out the melodic structure, and then I wrote the song, and Coleman wrote the lyrics with me. And
Coleman Decay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, luckily I was taking guitar lessons from John Rankin at the time, because I never could have come up with this chord progression if John hadn't taught me. So she comes in, and I was so gratified. The first thing she says as she walks in the studio is, baby, you know what I like about this song? Sounds like something I would have recorded in the '60s. And I was just like, yes, I did it, yeah. And then she goes, listen, just to make sure I got it right, would you sing it with me at the board before I go in the booth? Would I sing with you at the board? Yes, and then I'll die and go to heaven after. So I sing it with her at the board, we go through the song, and she goes, one more time? Yeah, I'm singing with Irma Thomas. So we sing it again, we get to the bridge, and she holds up her hand. I got the hand from Irma. I'll cherish that for the rest of my life.
Hand from Irma, yes.
And because she just wanted me to stop, because she took the bridge in a new direction. She altered the phrasing and the melody slightly, and elevated it to a whole new place. And when she finished doing the song, I just said, Irma, I have to give you a writing credit. That was amazing. You changed the bridge. She goes, baby, I didn't do nothing but change the phrase and a couple of notes. I said, that's writing a song. I'm going to give you credit. She said, I've done that for plenty of people. They ain't never give me credit. I said, well, it'll be my honor to do so. I don't know if you'll ever make a dime on it, but I'm going to have a credit with Irma Thomas.
So that was almost as much for you, because you get to have a
totally for me. But it was true. I mean, I did it for John, too. Like John
Boutté.
Yeah, John Boutté and I have written songs where he'll tell people, like meaning or a message, he'll say, I didn't really write that. Paul wrote that and gave it to me. But he's so great at improv. I'll sing him a song and say the lyrics. He's got the worst memory. So he'll sing the melody and the lyrics back, changed. Be close. Some of it will be exactly the same, but he's got a different sense of melody than I do, so the notes change. And he speaks differently, so the words change. And he looks at me and goes, is that it? And I go, absolutely. That's perfect.
And you get the credit for that. So.
Well, but we share. We do songwriting credits. I mean, and he wouldn't have written without me. The only song he'd ever written was Treme. Now it's way more popular and successful than anything I ever wrote, but it is the only song he ever wrote before we got together. And he's written songs now that people just love in his sets, you know, Good Neighbor and Foot of Canal Street, and they sing along, and I feel a part of that. It feels great. I love him. He's my brother.
It's the beauty of the collaboration, all the stuff that you've been able to do post Cowboy Mouth. I mean, one of those many, many collaborations
so
that have
many,
led you to where you are. Yeah, no, it's an amazing thing. Well, Paul, I am happy that you're singing again.
Me too.
The voice was missed, I think, so I'm glad you're back on the scene and it's strong, and so congratulations on that. Look forward to seeing the 9 Lives performance, and I hope it ends up on a TV screen at some point here in the near future.
Me too, me too. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk about all that.
Well, thank you for joining me today. Once again, my guest today has been Paul Sanchez. I am Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. I will see you again on Let's Talk.
Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.